The morning sun
I
cast a
love
golden
you.
glow across the
I love you
manicured
too.
gardens of Kensington Palace as Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood before her walk-in closet, carefully considering her options for the day ahead. Today wasn't just any ordinary royal engagement. It was a special visit to the Children's Hospital in Manchester, followed by an evening gala supporting mental health awareness. The significance of the day weighed gently on her shoulders as she ran her fingers across the carefully arranged garments. Her lady-in-waiting, Emma, had already laid out 3 potential outfits on the velvet chaise lounge, each representing a different approach to royal dressing. The first was a sophisticated navy blue coat dress by Alexander McQueen, elegant yet approachable. The second, a vibrant emerald green ensemble that would photograph beautifully against the autumn backdrop. The third, a more casual but refined cream-colored outfit perfect for interacting with children. Catherine paused at the emerald option, remembering how William had once mentioned that green brought out the warmth in her eyes. She could almost hear his voice from their early dating days, when royal protocol seemed like a distant concern, and choosing an outfit was simply about looking nice for the person you loved. Those simpler times felt both incredibly close and impossibly far away. Downstairs in his study, Prince William was reviewing the day's schedule with his private secretary, James. The itinerary was packed, but meaningful, exactly the kind of engagements that reminded him why he chose to dedicate his life to public service. The children's hospital visit would include meeting young patients and their families, followed by a tour of the new mental health wing that had been funded partly through their foundation's efforts. William adjusted his tie, a subtle pattern of navy and silver that Catherine had chosen for him the previous evening. She had this remarkable ability to select pieces that looked effortlessly stylish while maintaining the appropriate level of formality for any occasion. It was one of the many ways she had seamlessly adapted to royal life, bringing her own sense of style and warmth to traditions that had remained unchanged for centuries. The couple had learned over the years that their public appearances carried weight far beyond the immediate purpose of any single event. Every smile, every gesture, every carefully chosen word could provide comfort to someone going through difficult times or inspire others to get involved in causes they cared about. The responsibility was immense, but it was one they had grown to embrace together. As Catherine finally selected the Emerald Ensemble, she thought about the children they would meet today. Hospital visits were among her most meaningful engagements, even though they could be emotionally challenging. There was something profoundly moving about spending time with young people who faced such serious health challenges with courage and humor that put everyday problems into perspective. She had developed her own approach to these visits over the years. Rather than maintaining formal distance, she would sit on hospital beds, engage in genuine conversations, and show authentic interest in each child's story. The palace photographers had captured countless images of her crouched down to speak with young patients at eye level, her formal attire somehow never seeming out of place in those intimate moments. William appeared in the doorway of their bedroom just as Catherine was fastening a delicate pair of diamond earrings, a wedding gift from the Queen that had become one of her signature pieces. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit with a crisp white shirt and that navy tie she had selected. Even after more than a decade of marriage, she still felt a flutter of appreciation for how handsome he looked in formal attire. Their eyes met in the mirror, and without words, they shared one of those small moments of connection that had sustained their relationship through years of public scrutiny and private challenges. William crossed the room and gently placed his hands on her shoulders, meeting her gaze in the reflection. The drive to Manchester provided a rare opportunity for private conversation. Seated in the back of their official car, they reviewed their notes about the families they would meet and discussed the evening's gala. Catherine had prepared small gifts for each child they would visit, not expensive items, but thoughtfully chosen books and art supplies that reflected each young person's interests. William watched the English countryside roll past the window, thinking about how dramatically their lives had changed since their university days at St. Andrews. Back then, their biggest concerns involved upcoming exams and finding time to spend together between his military training and her art history studies. Now, every public appearance was carefully choreographed, every outfit analyzed, every word potentially quoted in newspapers around the world. Yet somehow, Catherine had managed to maintain an authenticity that resonated with people from all walks of life. She had this remarkable ability to make every person she met feel as though they were the most important person in the room. Whether speaking with a nervous child or a world leader, she brought the same genuine warmth and interest to every interaction. The hospital visit began with a brief meeting with the medical staff and administrators. Catherine listened intently as doctors explained the new mental health facilities and the impact the additional funding would have on their ability to treat young patients. William asked detailed questions about treatment protocols and long-term outcomes, demonstrating the depth of his commitment to understanding the causes they supported. When they entered the children's ward, the atmosphere immediately shifted. Despite the clinical setting, the rooms had been decorated with colorful artwork and cheerful decorations. Young patients who were well enough had gathered in the common area, their faces bright with excitement at the prospect of meeting the royal couple. Catherine knelt beside 7-year-old Sophie, who was recovering from a complex heart surgery. Sophie had prepared a drawing of a princess in a green dress, coincidentally matching Catherine's outfit perfectly. The Princess of Wales examined the artwork with genuine appreciation, asking about Sophie's use of color and encouraging her artistic talents. William spent time with Marcus, a teenage patient who had been struggling with depression following a serious sports injury that had ended his football dreams. Rather than offering empty platitudes, William shared his own experiences with mental health challenges and the importance of seeking support during difficult times. The conversation was genuine and unguarded in a way that surprised even the experienced hospital staff. As they moved through the ward, both William and Catherine demonstrated their natural ability to connect with people across all age groups and backgrounds. They remembered details from previous visits, asked follow-up questions about ongoing treatments, and showed genuine concern for each family's well-being. One of the most touching moments came when they met 8-year-old James, who had been born with a rare neurological condition. James had limited verbal communication, but was clearly excited to meet his royal visitors. Catherine sat patiently beside his wheelchair, engaging with him through gestures and expressions until he broke into a brilliant smile that lit up the entire room. The hospital staff later commented that both royals stayed significantly longer than scheduled, reluctant to leave, while there were still families to meet and stories to hear. Their security detail waited patiently as the couple ensured every child received individual attention and every parent had an opportunity to share their experiences. During a brief break between meetings, William and Catherine stepped onto a small balcony overlooking the hospital's garden. The autumn air was crisp, and Catherine pulled her coat closer as they took a moment to process the emotional intensity of the morning's visits. These were the moments that reminded them both why they had chosen this path, despite its challenges and constraints. The opportunity to provide comfort, raise awareness for important causes, and use their platform to make a real difference in people's lives made every sacrifice worthwhile. Catherine thought about the mothers she had spoken with, many of whom were spending weeks or even months living at the hospital while their children received treatment. Their strength and resilience were inspiring, but she also recognized the toll that such experiences took on entire families. William reflected on the young people they had met, each facing challenges that would test the resolve of most adults. Their courage and optimism in the face of serious illness served as a powerful reminder of human resilience and the importance of hope during dark times. As they prepared to leave for the evening gala, both felt energized despite the emotional weight of the hospital visit. These engagements reminded them that their public roles carried real meaning beyond ceremonial obligations and photo opportunities. The transition from the intimate hospital setting to the grand ballroom, where the mental health gala would take place, represented the dual nature of their royal duties. While the formal evening event would raise significant funds for important causes, it was the personal connections made during visits like today's that truly drove their passion for public service. Catherine touched up her makeup in the car, knowing that the evening's photographers would capture every detail of her appearance. The Emerald Ensemble had photographed beautifully during the hospital visit, and she was confident it would transition well to the more formal evening setting. William reviewed his speaking notes for the gala address, where he would share some of the stories from their hospital visit while protecting the privacy of the families they had met. Finding the right balance between raising awareness and respecting confidentiality was always a delicate challenge. As their car approached the hotel where the gala was being held, they could see crowds of supporters gathered behind barriers, hoping to catch a glimpse of the royal couple. The contrast between the intimate hospital wards they had just left and the grand public spectacle they were about to enter struck them both as representative of the complex nature of modern royal life. The evening ahead promised to be both glamorous and meaningful, combining the pageantry that people expected from royal events with substantive discussions about mental health awareness support for young people facing significant challenges. Catherine checked her reflection one final time, ensuring that her appearance would meet the high standards expected of royal fashion while remaining appropriate for an event focused on serious social issues. The emerald dress had indeed been the perfect choice, elegant enough for a formal gala, yet warm and approachable enough for spending time with young hospital patients. William straightened his bow tie and took Catherine's hand as their car came to a stop. In moments, they would step into the bright lights and camera flashes that always accompanied major royal appearances, but they carried with them the genuine connections and meaningful conversations from their hospital visit. The evening would bring new opportunities to raise awareness, generate support for important causes, and demonstrate that modern royal duties could successfully combine traditional ceremony with authentic engagement on issues that truly mattered to contemporary society. The camera flashes created a constellation of light as William and Catherine stepped from their official car onto the red carpet. The Manchester Grand Hotel had been transformed for the evening's Mental Health Awareness Gala, with elegant lighting and floral arrangements that spoke to both the glamour of the occasion and the serious nature of its purpose. Catherine moved with practiced grace, her emerald dress catching the light beautifully as photographers called out for the perfect shot. She had learned years ago to maintain a natural smile while navigating the intensity of such media attention, but tonight felt different somehow. The conversations from the hospital visit were still fresh in her mind, lending an extra depth of purpose to the evening's proceedings. The guest list represented a carefully curated mix of medical professionals, mental health advocates, celebrities, business leaders, and philanthropists. Each had been selected not just for their ability to contribute financially to the cause, but for their genuine commitment to advancing mental health awareness and support services for young people. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the hospital's chief psychiatrist, greeted the royal couple as they entered the ballroom. She had been instrumental in developing the new youth mental health programs that the evening's fundraising would help expand. Her passion for the work was evident as she described the innovative approaches they were implementing to reach young people who might otherwise fall through the cracks of traditional healthcare systems. William listened intently to Dr. Mitchell's explanation of their peer support programs, where teenagers who had successfully navigated their own mental health challenges were trained to mentor other young people facing similar struggles. The approach resonated with his belief that authentic connection and shared experience could be more powerful than traditional clinical interventions alone. Catherine was drawn into conversation with Maria Santos, a young woman whose teenage son had been helped by the hospital's early intervention programs. Maria's story was both heartbreaking and hopeful. Her son had struggled with severe anxiety and depression following bullying at school, but had found his way back to wellness through the comprehensive support services the hospital provided. The cocktail reception allowed for these more intimate conversations before the formal dinner began. Catherine had always believed that these personal exchanges were often more valuable than the speeches or presentations that would follow. Real understanding of complex social issues came through listening to individual stories and experiences. As they moved through the crowd, both William and Catherine demonstrated their ability to make each person feel genuinely heard and valued. They remembered names, asked follow-up questions, and showed authentic interest in the work and experiences being shared with them. This wasn't mere politeness, but a sincere engagement that had developed through years of meaningful public service. The ballroom itself was stunning, with round tables draped in elegant linens and centerpieces featuring white roses and soft greenery. The lighting had been designed to create warmth while ensuring that photographers could capture the proceedings clearly. Everything about the setting spoke to the high standards expected of royal events, but the focus remained firmly on the cause being supported. Celebrity chef Marcus Henderson had donated his services for the evening, creating a menu that was both sophisticated and accessible. He had worked closely with the hospital's nutritionists to incorporate ingredients known to support mental wellness, turning the dinner itself into an extension of the awareness campaign. During the pre-dinner reception, Catherine found herself in conversation with 16-year-old Emma, who had been invited to speak at the gala about her own experience with mental health challenges. Emma's poise and articulation were remarkable, but Catherine could see the nervousness beneath her confident exterior. Rather than offering generic encouragement, Catherine shared her own experiences with public speaking anxiety and the techniques she had developed over years of royal engagements. She spoke about the importance of focusing on the message rather than the audience's reactions, and how personal stories could create connections that transcended the formal setting of a large event. William joined a discussion with several young mental health advocates who were working to reduce stigma in schools and communities. Their innovative approaches to peer education and social media campaigns impressed him with their creativity and understanding of how to reach their own generation effectively. One of the advocates, 22-year-old David, had created a series of mental health awareness videos that had gone viral among teenagers. His approach combined humor with serious messaging in a way that made difficult topics more approachable for young people who might otherwise avoid seeking help. As dinner was announced, the guests moved to their assigned tables. William and Catherine were seated with a mix of hospital staff, patients' families, and major donors. The conversation flowed naturally between personal stories, professional insights, and discussions of policy changes that could expand access to mental health services. The first course arrived as Dr. James Patterson, the hospital's director, welcomed everyone and outlined the evening's goals. The funds raised would support 3 specific initiatives: expanded outpatient services for teenagers, a new family support program, and innovative technology that would allow for remote counseling in rural areas. Catherine noticed how the medical professionals at their table lit up when discussing these programs. Their enthusiasm was infectious and reminded her of why she had become so passionate about healthcare issues, particularly those affecting children and families. During the main course, the conversation turned to the broader challenges facing mental health services across the country. William asked thoughtful questions about funding mechanisms, training requirements for counselors, and the integration of mental health services into school systems. Dr. Elizabeth Walker, a researcher from the university's psychology department, explained her work on early identification of mental health risks in young people. Her studies had shown that many serious mental health issues could be prevented or significantly reduced through early intervention programs, but only if adequate resources were available. The data she shared was sobering. Mental health challenges among young people had increased dramatically in recent years, with social media, academic pressure, and social isolation all contributing to rising rates of anxiety and depression. However, she also shared encouraging evidence that comprehensive support programs could make a significant difference in outcomes. As the evening progressed, it became clear that this wasn't simply a fundraising dinner, but a genuine gathering of people committed to creating meaningful change. The conversations were substantive, the connections authentic, and the shared sense of purpose palpable throughout the room. Young Emma delivered her speech with remarkable composure, sharing her journey from severe depression to recovery with honesty that moved many guests to tears. She spoke about the importance of hope, the value of professional support, and the courage required to ask for help when struggling. Catherine watched Emma with admiration, thinking about the young patients they had visited earlier that day. Each had shown similar courage in their own way, facing challenges that would test anyone's resilience. Emma's willingness to speak publicly about her experiences could inspire other young people to seek the help they needed. William followed with remarks that wove together the personal stories from the hospital visit with broader themes about mental health awareness and support. He spoke about breaking down stigma, investing in prevention, and ensuring that no young person felt alone in their struggles. His speech was notable for its personal tone and specific examples, avoiding the generic platitudes that sometimes characterized formal royal addresses. The audience responded with genuine enthusiasm, recognizing the authentic commitment behind his words. The fundraising portion of the evening exceeded all expectations, with donations pouring in from guests who had been moved by the personal stories and professional presentations they had heard. Local businesses pledged ongoing support, and several guests committed to volunteering their time and expertise to support the hospital's programs. Catherine participated in the silent auction, bidding on artwork created by young patients and donating several items from her own collection. She was particularly drawn to a painting created by a teenage patient during her recovery from an eating disorder. The piece captured both struggle and hope in ways that words could not express. As the formal program concluded, many guests lingered, reluctant to end the meaningful conversations that had developed throughout the evening. The atmosphere was one of shared commitment and genuine connection, rather than the sometimes superficial networking that characterized some charity events. William and Catherine spent additional time speaking with the young advocates and patients who had participated in the evening's program. These conversations often proved to be the most valuable part of such events, providing insights that would inform their future work and deepen their understanding of the issues they supported. One conversation that particularly struck Catherine was with the mother of a young man who had died by suicide several years earlier. Rather than dwelling on the tragedy, she spoke about her work to prevent other families from experiencing similar losses. Her strength and determination to create positive change from devastating loss was both humbling and inspiring. The evening's success was measured not just in funds raised but in connections made and awareness increased. Several guests approached hospital staff to discuss volunteer opportunities, while others inquired about ways to support similar programs in their own communities. As William and Catherine prepared to leave, they were surrounded by young people who had participated in the evening's events. The genuine connections formed during these interactions reminded them both of why they had chosen to focus their charitable work on issues affecting children and families. The drive back to their hotel provided an opportunity to decompress and reflect on the day's experiences. Both the hospital visit and the gala had been emotionally intense in different ways, but both had reinforced their commitment to using their platform to support meaningful causes. Catherine looked out at the city lights, thinking about all the families across the country who were dealing with mental health challenges in their own homes. The work they had supported tonight would directly impact hundreds of young people, but the broader cultural change needed to address these issues would require sustained effort from many different sectors of society. William reviewed the commitments made during the evening and began planning follow-up actions. The royal couple's involvement didn't end with the event itself. They would continue to monitor the program's progress, visit facilities, and advocate for policy changes that could expand access to mental health services. The success of the evening had demonstrated something important about modern royal engagement. When authentic personal commitment combined with careful planning and meaningful partnerships, royal events could achieve far more than symbolic value. They could generate real resources for important causes and create lasting connections between people working toward common goals. As they returned to their accommodation, both William and Catherine felt the satisfaction that came from a day well spent in service of others. The combination of intimate hospital visits and formal fundraising events represented the dual nature of effective royal work, personal connection, and institutional support working together to create positive change. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight had reinforced their shared commitment to using their unique position to support causes that truly mattered to the people they served. The following morning dawned crisp and clear, with autumn sunlight streaming through the windows of the royal suite at the Manchester Hotel. Catherine woke before her alarm, her mind already processing the events of the previous day and the full schedule that lay ahead. Today would bring a different kind of engagement entirely, a visit to a local university where they would meet with students involved in mental health advocacy and research. William was already awake, quietly reviewing briefing papers while Catherine enjoyed a few more minutes under the warm covers. The hotel had provided them with a comprehensive overview of the university's groundbreaking research into youth mental health, including innovative programs that use technology to reach young people who might not access traditional counseling services. Their morning routine had become a comfortable rhythm over the years of royal travel. Catherine would spend time selecting appropriate attire for the day's activities while William finalized his talking points and reviewed the names and backgrounds of people they would meet. Both had learned the importance of this preparation in making their public appearances as meaningful and personal as possible. For today's university visit, Catherine chose a sophisticated burgundy coat dress that would photograph beautifully against the autumn campus setting while maintaining the professional appearance appropriate for academic environments. The color choice was deliberate, rich enough to stand out in photographs, but subdued enough to avoid overshadowing the students and researchers who were the real focus of the visit. The university had been selected for this engagement because of their innovative approach to mental health education and support services. Their student-led initiatives had become a model for other institutions, demonstrating how peer support and community engagement could complement traditional counseling services. Dr. Patricia Russell, the university's vice-chancellor, greeted them at the main entrance to the psychology building. She was a dynamic leader who had prioritized student mental health during her tenure, implementing comprehensive support systems that had significantly improved both academic outcomes and student well-being. The first stop was a classroom where psychology students were participating in a seminar on adolescent mental health intervention strategies. The professor had graciously agreed to allow William and Catherine to observe and participate in the discussion, providing insight into how the next generation of mental health professionals was being trained. Catherine was particularly impressed by the students' sophisticated understanding of cultural sensitivity in mental health treatment. One student presented research on how traditional therapeutic approaches needed to be adapted for different ethnic communities, while another discussed the unique challenges faced by LGBTQ+ youth seeking mental health support. William engaged in a thoughtful discussion with students about the role of family dynamics in youth mental health. Several students shared insights from their practical placements, describing innovative family therapy techniques that involved siblings and extended family members in the healing process. The conversation revealed the complexity of modern mental health challenges and the creative approaches being developed to address them. These students would graduate with a much more nuanced understanding of mental health than previous generations, equipped with tools and perspectives that could make a real difference in young people's lives. From the classroom, they moved to the university's counseling center, where they met with both professional staff and student peer counselors. The peer counseling program was particularly innovative, training students to provide first-level support to their classmates while knowing when to refer serious cases to professional counselors. Sarah Chun, a third-year psychology student who served as a peer counselor, explained how the program worked. Students received extensive training in active listening, crisis intervention, and resource navigation. The program had been remarkably successful, with many students reporting that they felt more comfortable initially approaching a peer than seeking help from adult professionals. Catherine spent considerable time speaking with these peer counselors, impressed by their maturity and commitment to supporting their fellow students. Their insights into campus mental health challenges were particularly valuable, as they understood the day-to-day pressures and social dynamics that could impact student well-being. One peer counselor, Marcus Thompson, shared his own experience with depression during his first year at university. His recovery had inspired him to become involved in peer support, and he had helped dozens of other students navigate similar challenges. His story demonstrated the power of lived experience in mental health support. The university had also developed innovative technology platforms to support student mental health. Dr. James Mitchell, who led their digital health initiatives, demonstrated an app that provided students with 24/7 access to mental health resources, mood tracking tools, and connection to professional support when needed. William was particularly interested in the data they had collected on app usage and outcomes. The technology was reaching students who might never have walked into a counseling office, providing early intervention that prevented many minor issues from becoming serious mental health crises. The app included features specifically designed for university students, such as stress management tools during exam periods, social connection features for students feeling isolated, and educational resources about common mental health challenges faced by young adults. Catherine explored the mindfulness and meditation components of the platform, which included guided sessions specifically designed for students dealing with academic pressure, relationship issues, and the transition to independent living. The content was created by mental health professionals, but delivered through technology that students found accessible and non-threatening. During lunch at the university's faculty club, William and Catherine joined a roundtable discussion with researchers, students, and mental health professionals. The conversation covered everything from funding challenges facing university counseling services to innovative research into the neurological basis of anxiety and depression. Dr. Amanda Foster presented findings from her longitudinal study tracking mental health outcomes for university students over 5 years. Her research had identified key risk factors that could predict mental health challenges, as well as protective factors that helped students maintain well-being during stressful periods. The data was sobering. Rates of anxiety and depression among university students had increased significantly over the past decade. However, Dr. Foster's research also showed that students who engaged with support services early in their university careers had much better outcomes than those who waited until problems became severe. One particularly interesting finding was the importance of social connection in maintaining mental health. Students who participated in clubs, societies, or volunteer activities showed significantly better mental health outcomes than those who remained socially isolated, even when controlling for other factors. Catherine asked thoughtful questions about how universities could better foster these social connections, particularly for students who might naturally tend toward isolation. The discussion that followed explored everything from orientation programs to structured social activities designed to help students build meaningful relationships. The afternoon session focused on research presentations by graduate students working on various aspects of youth mental health. William and Catherine listened to presentations on topics ranging from the impact of social media on teenage self-esteem to innovative therapeutic approaches for young people with eating disorders. One presentation that particularly caught Catherine's attention was delivered by Emma Rodriguez, a doctoral student studying the mental health impacts of childhood trauma. Her research was developing screening tools that could help identify children at risk for later mental health challenges, potentially enabling early intervention that could prevent serious problems from developing. Emma's work had been inspired by her own experience growing up in a household affected by domestic violence. Her research combined rigorous academic methodology with deep personal understanding of how childhood experiences could impact lifelong mental health. William was drawn to research being conducted by David Park, who was studying the effectiveness of school-based mental health programs. David's work was evaluating different approaches to integrating mental health education into standard curricula, with promising results showing that students who received comprehensive mental health education were more likely to seek help when needed. The research presentations demonstrated the incredible depth and breadth of current mental health research, but also highlighted the gap between academic findings and real-world implementation. Many innovative approaches had been proven effective in research settings, but lacked the funding or institutional support needed for widespread adoption. Following the research presentations, William and Catherine participated in a town hall meeting with students from across the university. Students had been invited to ask questions and share their perspectives on mental health support and awareness. The questions were thoughtful and challenging, reflecting genuine engagement with the issues at hand. Students asked about everything from government funding for mental health services to the role of social media companies in protecting young people's mental health. One student asked Catherine about her own experiences with mental health challenges and how she maintained well-being while dealing with intense public scrutiny. Catherine's response was honest and thoughtful, acknowledging the pressures of public life while emphasizing the importance of professional support, strong relationships, and self-care practices. Another student challenged William about the adequacy of current government funding for youth mental health services. William acknowledged the student's concerns and spoke about the advocacy work he and Catherine were doing to raise awareness among policymakers about the urgent need for increased investment in mental health support. The town hall format allowed for genuine dialogue rather than formal presentations, creating space for the kind of authentic exchange that both William and Catherine valued most in their public engagements. The students' questions demonstrated both their sophistication in understanding mental health issues and their passion for creating positive change. As the day's formal program concluded, many students approached William and Catherine for individual conversations. These informal interactions often provided the most valuable insights, as students felt free to share personal experiences and perspectives they might not raise in larger group settings. Catherine spoke at length with a group of international students who described the unique mental health challenges they faced, dealing with homesickness, cultural adjustment, academic pressure, and often limited family support due to distance and time differences. William engaged with student leaders who were working to reduce mental health stigma on campus through peer education programs. Their initiatives included everything from mental health awareness weeks to training for faculty and staff on recognizing signs of student distress. The visit concluded with a tour of the university's new wellness center, which provided integrated support services including counseling, medical care, academic support, and wellness programs. The facility represented a holistic approach to student support that recognized the interconnected nature of mental health, physical health, and academic success. The Wellness Center included spaces for both individual and group counseling, meditation, and mindfulness areas, study spaces designed to reduce stress, and even a therapy dog program that provided comfort to students dealing with anxiety or depression. As they prepared to leave the university, both William and Catherine reflected on the impressive work being done by students, faculty, and staff to address youth mental health challenges. The visit had provided valuable insights into both innovative solutions and ongoing needs in mental health support for young people. The drive back to London offered time to process the wealth of information they had gathered over 2 intensive days of mental health-focused engagements. Both felt energized by the passion and innovation they had witnessed, but also sobered by the scale of the challenges facing young people's mental health. Catherine made notes about several initiatives they had learned about that might be worth supporting through their foundation's work. The peer counseling programs, in particular, seemed like an approach that could be scaled to other universities and potentially adapted for secondary schools. William was particularly interested in following up on the research presentations they had heard, exploring whether their foundation could support some of the innovative work being done by graduate students who often struggled to find funding for their important research. The university visit had demonstrated the vital role that academic institutions could play in addressing youth mental health challenges, not just through research and professional training, but through innovative support services and peer education programs that could serve as models for other institutions. As they returned to their regular royal duties, both carried with them new insights and connections that would inform their ongoing work in mental health advocacy. The combination of hospital visits, fundraising galas, and university engagements had provided a comprehensive view of the mental health landscape and the many different approaches needed to support young people effectively. The success of these engagements lay not just in the immediate impact of fundraising or awareness raising, but in the relationships built and knowledge gained that would support their long-term advocacy work in this crucial area. 3 weeks after their Manchester engagements, the impact of William and Catherine's mental health advocacy was becoming evident in ways that surprised even their most experienced staff members. Letters and emails had flooded into Kensington Palace from young people across the country, sharing their own stories and expressing gratitude for the attention being given to youth mental health issues. Catherine sat in her private office, reading through a selection of these letters that her staff had compiled. Each one represented a young person who had been moved to reach out, often for the first time, about their mental health struggles. Many credited the royal couple's openness and advocacy with giving them courage to seek help or speak to family members about their challenges. One letter particularly touched her heart. It came from a 17-year-old named Jessica from a small town in Wales, who wrote about finally telling her parents about her anxiety and depression after seeing news coverage of the hospital visit. Jessica's parents had initially struggled to understand, but the information shared in the media coverage had helped them recognize the reality of their daughter's challenges. William was in a meeting with their foundation's program directors, reviewing proposals for new initiatives inspired by their recent engagements. The university visit had sparked several ideas about peer support programs that could be implemented in secondary schools, while the hospital visit had highlighted gaps in family support services that their foundation might be able to address. The foundation's mental health portfolio had grown significantly over the past year, reflecting both William and Catherine's personal commitment to the cause and the urgent need for innovative approaches to youth mental health support. They were now funding pilot programs in 12 different locations across the UK, each testing different models of community-based mental health support. Dr. Sarah Mitchell from the Manchester Hospital had become a regular advisor to the foundation, helping to evaluate proposals and ensure that funded programs were based on solid evidence and best practices. Her expertise was invaluable in navigating the complex landscape of mental health interventions and identifying approaches most likely to succeed. The ripple effects of their advocacy were extending beyond individual stories and foundation programs. Several major corporations had reached out expressing interest in supporting youth mental health initiatives, inspired by the business case for investing in young people's well-being that William had articulated during their recent engagements. Catherine was particularly pleased to learn that 3 other universities had contacted Manchester about implementing similar peer counseling programs. The willingness of institutions to learn from and adapt successful models suggested that their advocacy was creating the kind of systemic change they hoped to achieve. The royal couple's approach to mental health advocacy had evolved considerably since they first began focusing on this issue. Initially, their involvement had been more traditional, lending their names to established charities and attending ceremonial events. Over time, they had developed a more strategic and hands-on approach that emphasized direct engagement with affected communities and support for innovative solutions. This evolution reflected their growing understanding of mental health issues and their recognition that meaningful change required more than symbolic support. Their willingness to engage deeply with complex topics and spend substantial time learning from experts and affected communities had earned respect from mental health professionals and advocates. One morning, Catherine received a call from Emma, the young woman who had spoken so eloquently at the Manchester Gala. Emma was calling to share exciting news. She had been accepted to study psychology at university and hoped to eventually become a counselor specializing in adolescent mental health. Emma credited her involvement in the gala with helping her realize that her own experience with mental health challenges could become a source of strength in helping others. The positive response to her speech had given her confidence to pursue her dream of working in mental health, despite previous doubts about whether her own struggles would be seen as a liability. Catherine's conversation with Emma exemplified one of the most rewarding aspects of their mental health advocacy, seeing how sharing stories and reducing stigma could empower young people to transform their challenges into sources of strength and purpose. William was experiencing similar rewards through his ongoing correspondence with several of the young advocates they had met at the university. Their innovative approaches to mental health awareness on social media had inspired him to think more creatively about how Royal Communications could support mental health awareness without seeming preachy or out of touch. The challenge of authentic Royal communication about mental health required careful navigation. William and Catherine wanted to use their platform to normalize conversations about mental health and encourage help-seeking behavior, but they also needed to respect privacy boundaries and avoid appearing to offer medical advice or oversimplify complex issues. Their communications team had worked closely with mental health professionals to develop messaging guidelines that would allow them to speak authentically about mental health while remaining appropriate to their roles and responsibilities. The goal was to model healthy attitudes toward mental health rather than position themselves as experts in treatment or intervention. One particularly successful initiative had been a series of social media posts featuring young people who had benefited from mental health support. These posts, shared with the participants' enthusiastic consent, showed real people thriving after receiving help, challenging stereotypes about mental health treatment and outcomes. The posts generated significant engagement, with thousands of young people sharing their own experiences in the comments, and many expressing that they were inspired to seek help. Mental health organizations reported increased calls to helplines and visits to websites following these posts, suggesting that the royal couple's advocacy was having measurable impact on help-seeking behavior. Catherine was also working with several fashion magazines to promote mental health awareness through her public appearances. Rather than simply focusing on her clothing choices, these collaborations highlighted the mental health organizations she supported and provided information about resources available to young people. This approach allowed her to use the significant media attention paid to her fashion choices for a greater purpose, transforming potentially superficial coverage into opportunities for mental health education and awareness raising. William had begun incorporating mental health themes into many of his speeches and public appearances, regardless of the primary focus of the event. He had learned to weave these messages naturally into remarks about education, youth development, or community service, expanding the reach of mental health awareness beyond dedicated mental health events. This integration of mental health awareness into broader royal messaging reflected their understanding that mental health intersected with virtually every aspect of young people's lives, from academic achievement to career development to relationship building. The foundation was also developing partnerships with technology companies to expand access to mental health resources through digital platforms. The university app they had learned about in Manchester had inspired them to explore how technology could reach young people who might not access traditional services. These partnerships were complex, requiring careful attention to privacy, effectiveness, and accessibility. William and Catherine insisted that any technology initiatives they supported must be evidence-based and designed with input from both mental health professionals and young people themselves. One particularly promising partnership was with a gaming company that was developing mental health content for popular video game platforms. The approach recognized that young people spent significant time in digital environments and sought to provide mental health support and education within those spaces. Catherine was initially skeptical of this approach, but after speaking with young gamers and learning about the supportive communities that existed within gaming platforms, she became enthusiastic about the potential for reaching young people where they already spent time. The gaming initiative included features like stress management mini-games, educational content about mental health, and connections to professional support services when needed. Early testing showed that young people engaged with mental health content much more readily when it was integrated into familiar digital environments. As their mental health advocacy continued to evolve, William and Catherine were also grappling with questions about how to measure and evaluate their impact. Traditional metrics like funds raised or events attended didn't capture the full scope of their influence on attitudes, awareness, and help-seeking behavior. They were working with researchers to develop more sophisticated approaches to impact measurement, including surveys of public attitudes toward mental health, tracking of help-seeking behavior following their advocacy activities, and longitudinal studies of young people who had participated in programs they supported. This focus on evidence and evaluation reflected their commitment to ensuring that their advocacy was genuinely helpful rather than merely well-intentioned. They wanted to understand what worked, what didn't, and how their approach could be continuously improved to maximize positive impact. The measurement challenge also extended to their own well-being. The emotional intensity of their mental health advocacy work required them to develop strategies for maintaining their own mental health while supporting others. They had both learned the importance of debriefing after difficult visits, maintaining boundaries around their involvement in individual cases, and seeking professional support when needed. Their commitment to modeling healthy approaches to mental health included being open about the support they received and the strategies they used to maintain their own well-being. This authenticity resonated with young people who appreciated seeing that even privileged individuals faced challenges and needed support. Catherine had begun working with a counselor to process some of the difficult stories she encountered in her advocacy work. While she found the work deeply meaningful, she also recognized that regular exposure to others' trauma could affect her own mental health if not properly managed. William had developed his own strategies for maintaining emotional balance, including regular exercise, meditation practice, and scheduled time for activities completely unrelated to his royal duties. He had learned that maintaining his own well-being was essential not just for personal reasons, but for his effectiveness as an advocate and supporter of others. Their approach to self-care had become part of their advocacy message, demonstrating that seeking support and prioritizing mental health were signs of strength rather than weakness. This modeling was particularly important given their high-profile positions and the tendency for young people to view public figures as immune from the challenges of everyday life. As autumn progressed toward winter, William and Catherine began planning their next phase of mental health advocacy. They were considering a major conference that would bring together researchers, practitioners, policymakers, and young advocates to share knowledge and develop collaborative approaches to youth mental health challenges. The conference concept reflected their evolution from supporting existing organizations toward becoming conveners and catalysts for broader systemic change. They were increasingly interested in using their platform to facilitate connections and collaborations that might not otherwise occur. Planning for such an event was complex, requiring careful attention to ensuring diverse voices were included, that young people were meaningfully involved in shaping the agenda, and that the outcomes would lead to concrete improvements in mental health support and services. Catherine was particularly passionate about ensuring that young people with lived experience of mental health challenges would be central to the conference planning and programming. She had learned that their insights were often more valuable than those of adult professionals who worked in the field but hadn't personally navigated mental health challenges. The conference planning process itself was becoming an opportunity for advocacy, as it required conversations with government officials, healthcare leaders, and other stakeholders about the current state of youth mental health services and the changes needed to improve outcomes. These planning conversations were revealing both the tremendous commitment of many individuals working in mental health and the systemic barriers that prevented even the most innovative approaches from reaching the young people who needed them most. William and Catherine were learning that effective advocacy required not just raising awareness and generating resources, but also understanding and addressing the complex policy and institutional factors that shaped mental health services. Their deepening engagement with these systemic issues was preparing them for an even more impactful phase of their advocacy work, one that would leverage their unique position to influence not just individual programs, but the broader systems and policies that determined whether young people could access the mental health support they needed. 6 months later, the National Youth Mental Health Conference that William and Catherine had envisioned was becoming reality in London's most prestigious conference center. The event had grown beyond their original conception, attracting over 800 participants from across the United Kingdom and several other countries. What had begun as an idea to bring together diverse voices in youth mental health had evolved into a landmark gathering that would shape policy and practice for years to come. Catherine stood in the main auditorium during the final sound check, watching technicians adjust lighting and test microphones. The space would soon be filled with young people who had lived experience of mental health challenges, alongside researchers, policymakers, healthcare professionals, educators, and advocates. The diversity of perspectives represented at the conference was exactly what she had hoped to achieve. The conference program had been developed through an innovative collaborative process that gave young people equal voice with adult professionals in shaping the agenda. Emma, the young woman who had spoken at the Manchester Gala and was now thriving in her psychology studies, had been appointed as the youth co-chair of the planning committee. Emma's leadership in the conference planning had been transformational, not just for the event itself, but for her own development as an advocate. She had demonstrated remarkable skill in facilitating discussions between diverse stakeholders, ensuring that academic research was translated into accessible language, and that policy discussions remained grounded in the real experiences of young people. William arrived at the conference center early, wanting to personally greet many of the participants before the formal sessions began. He was particularly excited to reconnect with several young advocates he had met during their earlier engagements, eager to learn about their continued work and personal journeys. The opening session featured a panel of young people sharing their stories, but with a twist that reflected the conference's innovative approach. Rather than simply recounting their struggles, each speaker focused on the systems, relationships, and interventions that had supported their recovery and ongoing well-being. Marcus, the former hospital patient who had struggled with depression following his sports injury, spoke eloquently about the importance of peer support and the value of connecting with others who had faced similar challenges. His presentation included concrete recommendations for expanding peer support programs in schools and communities. Sarah, one of the university peer counselors they had met in Manchester, presented research she had conducted on the effectiveness of student-led mental health initiatives. Her work demonstrated that peer-delivered interventions could be as effective as professional services for certain types of support, while being more accessible and less intimidating for many young people. Catherine listened to these presentations with deep satisfaction, recognizing how far these young advocates had come since their earlier meetings. Their growth in confidence, expertise, and leadership capacity demonstrated the transformative power of being given meaningful opportunities to contribute to solutions. The conference's research strand featured presentations on cutting-edge developments in youth mental health treatment and prevention. Dr. Amanda Foster from the Manchester University presented updated findings from her longitudinal study, showing how early intervention programs had reduced long-term mental health risks for participating students. Dr. Sarah Mitchell presented data on the expansion of the family support programs they had visited months earlier. The programs had now been implemented in 15 hospitals across the country, with early results showing significant improvements in both patient outcomes and family satisfaction with care. William was particularly interested in presentations about policy innovations in other countries that might be adapted for the UK context. A researcher from Finland presented their school-based mental health model, which had achieved remarkable results by integrating mental health education into standard curricula from primary school onward. The policy strand of the conference brought together government officials, healthcare administrators, and advocacy organizations to discuss systemic changes needed to improve youth mental health services. These discussions were often challenging, as they required confronting difficult realities about resource constraints, institutional barriers, and competing priorities. Catherine participated in a panel discussion about the role of families in supporting young people's mental health. She spoke honestly about the challenges that parents faced in recognizing mental health issues, finding appropriate services, and supporting their children's recovery while maintaining their own well-being. Her contribution to the panel was notable for its practical focus and genuine empathy for the difficulties that families encountered. She had learned through her advocacy work that parents often felt overwhelmed and guilty when their children experienced mental health challenges, particularly when traditional parenting approaches seemed inadequate. The panel discussion generated significant audience engagement, with many participants sharing their own experiences as parents, children, or siblings in families affected by mental health issues. The conversation highlighted the need for family-centered approaches to mental health support that recognize the interconnected nature of family well-being. One of the most innovative aspects of the conference was its technology showcase, featuring digital tools and platforms designed to support youth mental health. The gaming initiative that Catherine had initially questioned was now demonstrating impressive early results, with young users engaging with mental health content at much higher rates than traditional services achieved. The technology presentations also included concerning findings about the impact of social media on youth mental health. Researchers presented evidence about both the risks and potential benefits of digital platforms, leading to nuanced discussions about how technology could be designed to support rather than undermine young people's well-being. William participated in a working group focused on developing recommendations for social media companies and digital platform designers. The group brought together researchers, young people, technology professionals, and policymakers to discuss evidence-based approaches to creating safer online environments for young people. The working group's discussions were complex and sometimes contentious, reflecting genuine disagreements about the balance between protecting young people and preserving digital freedoms. However, the diversity of perspectives led to nuanced recommendations that acknowledged both the risks and benefits of digital technologies. Throughout the conference, Catherine was struck by the sophistication of discussions and the collaborative spirit among participants. Unlike many conferences she had attended, where different professional groups often seemed to operate in parallel, this event was generating genuine cross-sector dialogue and partnership development. Several concrete collaborations emerged during the conference's networking sessions. Universities committed to sharing their peer support training materials with secondary schools. Technology companies agreed to work with mental health organizations to develop evidence-based digital interventions. Government officials identified regulatory changes that could expand access to innovative mental health services. The conference's youth advocacy strand was particularly energizing, featuring young people from across the country who were leading mental health initiatives in their schools and communities. Their presentations showcased remarkable creativity and effectiveness in reaching their peers with mental health education and support. One presentation that particularly impressed both William and Catherine was delivered by a group of teenagers who had developed a mental health awareness campaign specifically designed for social media platforms. Their approach combined engaging content with clear pathways to professional support, achieving viral reach while maintaining safety and accuracy. The group had worked closely with mental health professionals to ensure their content was appropriate and helpful, demonstrating a level of responsibility and sophistication that challenged stereotypes about teenage social media use. As the conference progressed into its second day, the focus shifted toward action planning and commitment making. Rather than ending with general resolutions, the conference was designed to generate specific commitments from participants to implement new approaches or support innovative initiatives. Catherine announced several new foundation commitments that had emerged from conference discussions. The foundation would fund a major expansion of peer support training programs, support research into family-centered mental health interventions, and create grants for young advocates to implement their own mental health initiatives. William announced a new partnership with several major employers to develop workplace mental health programs specifically designed to support young employees. The initiative recognized that mental health challenges often persisted or emerged as young people entered the workforce, but that workplace mental health programs were typically designed for older employees. The employer partnership included commitments to adapt recruitment practices to be more inclusive of young people with mental health histories, provide mental health support that was relevant to young workers' needs, and create career development opportunities that recognize the value of lived experience in certain roles. One of the most moving moments of the conference came when Emma delivered the closing address. Speaking without notes, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from being a patient sharing her story to co-chairing a national conference on youth mental health. Emma's address emphasized the importance of hope and the transformative power of being given meaningful opportunities to contribute to solutions. She challenged the audience to continue the collaborative spirit beyond the conference, working across traditional boundaries to create the systemic changes that young people needed and deserved. The conference concluded with a commitment ceremony where participants made specific pledges about actions they would take in the following year. These commitments ranged from individual behavior changes to organizational policy reforms to advocacy initiatives. Catherine and William made their own public commitments, pledging to continue their deep engagement with youth mental health advocacy and to use their platform to support the innovations and collaborations that had emerged from the conference. As participants departed, there was a palpable sense that something significant had been accomplished. The conference had succeeded in creating genuine dialogue across traditional boundaries, generating concrete commitments to action, and demonstrating the power of collaborative approaches to complex social challenges. In the weeks following the conference, William and Catherine began receiving reports about the implementation of commitments made during the event. Universities were sharing resources, technology companies were adapting their platforms, and young advocates were receiving funding and support for their initiatives. The conference had also generated significant media coverage that extended its impact beyond the participants. News stories about the innovative collaborations and youth leadership featured in the event helped normalize conversations about mental health and highlighted effective approaches to support. Catherine reflected on how much their approach to mental health advocacy had evolved since those early hospital visits. What had begun as traditional royal charity work had developed into a sophisticated understanding of systemic change and their unique role in facilitating collaborations and amplifying voices that might otherwise go unheard. William was already thinking ahead to the next phase of their advocacy, considering how they could build on the momentum generated by the conference to influence broader policy changes and cultural shifts around mental health. Their work had demonstrated that effective royal advocacy in the modern era required more than symbolic support or fundraising. It required deep engagement with complex issues, authentic relationships with affected communities, and strategic thinking about how to leverage their unique platform for maximum positive impact. The success of their mental health advocacy had also provided a model for their approach to other social issues. The principles they had learned, listening to affected communities, supporting innovation, facilitating collaboration, and focusing on systemic change, were applicable to many of the challenges facing contemporary society. As they looked toward the future, both William and Catherine felt confident that their work in mental health advocacy had not only made a meaningful difference for young people across the country, but had also established a new standard for engaged, effective royal public service in the 21st century. The journey from that first hospital visit to the national conference represented not just their personal growth as advocates, but the evolution of royal engagement with social issues toward a more collaborative, evidence-based, and genuinely impactful model that could inspire and support positive change for generations to come.